in our lives, what would life be, do you think? Listen, I'm asking you a question now. If it were not for those down things, see, it's the challenges in our lives that teaches us our lesson. Gladys, you've always dictated my life. I mean, other than Heavenly Father, you've always dictated my life, what I need to do, what I'm going to do, whether my music is good.
At 81, Gladys Knight no longer sings to be loved. She sings to release the pain she has carried all her life. 60 years in music, 60 years standing beside the people she once called brothers, friends, and soulmates. But now only bitterness remains. Her voice trembles as she speaks slowly, raspy and tired. I forgave them all, except 10. They are the 10 musicians who hurt her, stole her trust, her friendships, and the pride she once had in her art. Tonight, Gladys Knight will tell her story, not for revenge, but to reveal the truth she kept silent for far too long. These are the 10 musicians the Queen of Soul will never forgive. 1. Berry Gordy, the devil in a suit. The story begins on a summer night in 1966 when Gladys Knight signed the contract that would haunt her forever. On the paper bearing the Motown logo, Berry Gordy's name appeared right below the words, Executive Chairman. For most black singers of that era, signing with Motown was a dream come true, but for Gladys it was the doorway to a golden prison. Gordy discovered her after a show in Detroit. He approached, shook her hand, and smiled coldly. You have the voice of an angel, but to survive in this world, you must learn to sing for the devil. From that day on, Gladys's life was tied to the man in the tailored suit, always smelling of expensive cologne, his eyes sharp enough to make anyone look down. At first, Motown made her believe she was about to reach glory, but within months, she realized her place in the system. Gordy forced the Pips to perform 7 nights a week, traveling endlessly across states. They sang until exhaustion while their pay was cut, under the excuse of a promotion fund. Whenever Gladys asked for rest time or proposed a new song, Gordy's only reply was silence and contempt. In August 1968, during a meeting at Motown headquarters on West Grand Boulevard, Gladys entered the room holding a demo of I Heard It Through the Grapevine. She believed it would be the song to make her legendary. But Gordy, cold as ice, declared that the song would go to Marvin Gaye. 3 months later, Marvin's version topped the Billboard chart for 7 consecutive weeks. Gladys's recording, meanwhile, was locked away in Motown's vaults, never officially released. On the morning of December 10, 1968, Gladys received a bouquet of white roses at the studio. No card, just a single line written in red ink. Thank you for contributing to Motown's success. She threw the flowers to the floor, tears falling onto the tiles. She never forgot that day, the day she realized that in Berry Gordy's world, the winners were chosen long before the race began, and the losers were only allowed to sing congratulations. After that, Gordy began his quiet punishments. He forced the Pips to open shows for Diana Ross, even though audiences came for Gladys. During her sets, the stage lights dimmed. Recording sessions were postponed, tours canceled at the last minute. In February 1970, Gladys proposed a solo album, but Gordy rejected it and signed Diana Ross instead. Everything revolved around Motown's new queen, the woman Gordy loved, protected, and favored above all. Rumors spread through the label that Gordy tried to control Gladys with sweet promises during private dinners in Beverly Hills. One September evening in 1970, he invited her to his penthouse, saying it was a private meeting about the Pips' future. Gladys politely refused and left. 3 days later, the group's entire tour schedule was erased. Everyone inside Motown understood what had happened, but no one dared to speak. At Motown, there were no written rules, only Berry Gordy's law. In 1973, Gladys Knight left Motown quietly, but Gordy didn't let her go easily. He froze the group's copyrights, preventing them from performing their old hits. The legal battle dragged on for 2 years, leaving Gladys emotionally and financially drained. By the time she regained the right to perform Midnight Train to Georgia, her reputation was damaged. The press labeled her a Motown traitor, while Gordy smiled and kept producing new hits, as if no one had ever been left behind. The peak of humiliation came in March 1983, when Motown held its 25th anniversary celebration in Los Angeles. Every Motown legend was invited: Diana Ross, Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, Smokey Robinson, except Gladys Knight. After protests from a few colleagues, her name was added at the last minute. But when the show aired on TV, her performance was completely cut out. She sat before the screen, watching her peers appear one by one while she vanished as if she had never existed. For years afterward, Gladys avoided speaking about Berry Gordy. When asked, she would only say, "He knew how to love music, but not people." Friends say she still keeps an old letter from Motown in her drawer, the contract termination notice she received in 1973. Its corners yellowed, but the words, "Do not contact Mr. Gordy directly," still perfectly clear. At 81, as she recounts her past, her voice still shakes. She says she doesn't hate him for money, but because he made her doubt her own voice. To her, Berry Gordy was the devil in a suit, a man who turned the talents of hundreds of black artists into stepping stones for his power, forcing Gladys Knight to sing all her life just to forget the humiliation called Motown. Ever since that year, every time the stage lights shine, Gladys remembers that winter night of 1968, the night Berry Gordy stole her song, her dream, and her belief that music could save the human soul. 2. Marvin Gaye. The angel who lied. Among all the people who hurt Gladys Knight, no one broke her heart more than Marvin Gaye, the man she once called the Angel of Soul, but who became the first to destroy her faith in friendship through music. To the world, Marvin was the voice of emotion, the singer who healed America's soul. But to Gladys, he proved that those who sing of love are often the best at betrayal. Their relationship began in 1971, during the Motown Live Across America tour. Gladys was rising fast after the success of If I Were Your Woman, while Marvin was recovering from a breakdown and reclaiming his place after What's Going On. They quickly grew close. Gladys called him Big Brother, and Marvin would joke, "We're two halves of one soul." Backstage, they shared melodies, discussed ideas for a duet album, and found comfort in each other's company. According to musicians on the tour, one night in July 1971 in Chicago, Gladys gave Marvin a demo of a song she had written while traveling between cities. The song was called I'll Be There When You Cry, a tender soul piece about forgiveness. Marvin listened, put his arm around her, and said, "We'll sing this together. It'll be Motown's greatest love song." Gladys trusted him and handed over the original draft. 2 months later, at Motown's office, Gladys saw an announcement for Marvin's upcoming single titled When You Cry. The title was slightly different, but the melody was identical. Her demo had vanished from the archives, and the only songwriter credit on the record read Marvin P. Gaye. When she called the label to ask, the secretary simply replied, "That's the production department's decision." The song became an instant hit, charting for weeks. On stage, Marvin would cry while performing it, saying, "It came straight from my heart." Meanwhile, Gladys sat alone in her dressing room, listening to her own melody on the radio without her name attached. That night, after a show in Detroit, Marvin smiled, opened his arms, and told her slowly, "Soul belongs to me." She said nothing. The next morning, the Detroit Free Press printed his photo under the headline, "The Man Who Redefined Soul." From that day, Gladys never co-wrote with anyone again. She called it the Detroit Night, the night she learned that in Motown's world, kindness was exploited, and closeness was just a tool for ambition. Band members recalled that afterward she became withdrawn, avoiding Marvin and even requesting room changes whenever their tour dates overlapped. things worsened after 1973 when Marvin released Let's Get It On. In an interview, he said the inspiration for If I Should Die Tonight came from a female friend on tour in 1971. Everyone at Motown knew who he meant. Gladys felt humiliated. The press began spreading rumors about their relationship, while Detroit tabloids hinted that Gladys Knight was Marvin Gaye's secret muse. She stayed silent, but that silence became her burden. When Marvin was shot dead on April 1, 1984, Gladys did not attend the funeral. In an interview later, when asked why, she said, "I cried for him long ago. I didn't need to wait until he died." Many saw the remark as cruel, but those who lived through the Motown years understood. It was the voice of someone deeply betrayed. Marvin Gaye is celebrated worldwide as the spirit of soul music. But to Gladys Knight, he was the angel who lied, the man who preached love through song while stealing the trust of others in life. Whenever she hears his voice on the radio, she still admits it's beautiful beyond words, yet painfully so, because it reminds her that even angels can betray. And sometimes the sweetest lies are sung with the most perfect voice. 3. Curtis Mayfield, the prophet who used me. Some wounds aren't caused by betrayal in its rawest form, but by faith being exploited. For Gladys Knight, Curtis Mayfield was the one who taught her that painful lesson. He was the symbol of socially conscious soul, the prophet of black music, a man whose songs spoke of hope, justice, and faith. Yet behind the glasses, the calm voice and the Bible quotes in every interview was a man of deep calculation, a man who knew how to use ideals to make others kneel. In 1974, after Gladys left Motown and fell into a career crisis, Curtis Mayfield was the first to extend a helping hand. He called her from Chicago, saying he was working on the soundtrack for Claudine, a project meant to redefine the image of black women in society. Gladys believed this was her chance to return, and more than that, a chance to work with the man she had admired for years. Curtis invited her to Curtom Records on South Michigan Avenue, promising, "Everything will be credited fairly." The sessions ran throughout October 1974, filled with creative energy. Gladys helped write lyrics for On and On, adjusted the melody of the chorus, and re-recorded it multiple times to perfect the emotion. She believed this was a shared creation, a fusion of two souls and two visions. When the song was finished, the whole team celebrated. Gladys signed a temporary co-writer acknowledgement. Curtis shook her hand, and everyone thought things had been settled fairly. But 3 weeks later, when Claudine, original soundtrack by Curtis Mayfield, was released, Gladys opened the first printed copy and froze. Under composer, there was only one name, Curtis Mayfield. Her name was gone, as if she had never existed. The album cover read, Curtis Mayfield featuring Gladys Knight, instead of Gladys Knight and Curtis Mayfield. To the public, she was just a hired voice for his project. The shock nearly broke her. In her personal diary, she wrote, "Dear God, I thought those who preached freedom were the ones who knew how to love, but they only loved the sound of their own voice." The song's success came like a flood. On and On climbed the Billboard charts, earned an Oscar nomination in 1975, and Curtis was hailed as the genius who resurrected soul. When reporters asked about the writing process, he only smiled and said, "Music comes from God, not from individuals." That was the moment Gladys knew she would never hear an apology. After that, Curtis Mayfield became the name Gladys hated in silence. She never publicly criticized him, but in interviews, whenever someone mentioned Claudine, her eyes would quietly turn away. Those close to her said that for years, Gladys never performed On and On stage, even though it was the song that marked her comeback. Every time the opening notes played, she would step out of the room, as if escaping her own pain. To her, that melody was no longer a hymn to love. It was the sound of betrayal, wrapped in the name of art. When Curtis Mayfield died in 1999, Gladys sent a wreath of white flowers. No card, no message, To those who didn't know, it looked like a gesture of respect. But to her, it was a way to close a dark chapter of her life. The chapter where a man who preached justice had stolen another's work and was still praised as a saint. In Gladys Knight's eyes, Curtis Mayfield was the thief disguised as a prophet. 4. James Brown, the God who needed worship. No one in Motown angered Gladys Knight more than James Brown. To the world, he was the godfather of soul, a symbol of power and of black pride in music. But to those who worked with him, James Brown wasn't a god. He was a tyrant wearing the robes of soul. In 1971, when Gladys and the Pips joined Brown's European tour, she saw the dark side of the soul empire for the first time. Brown ruled everything like a dictator. Each morning, he forced the band to rehearse marching formations and find anyone who was late. For the female singers, he had an unspoken rule: they could only sing when he signaled. Gladys called it a nightmare wrapped in funk. On April 15, 1971, at the Paris Olympia, the audience gave Gladys the loudest applause of the night. When she finished "I Don't Want to Do Wrong," the spotlight flared, and the cheers drowned out the MC's next announcement. From the wings, James Brown's eyes turned cold. When he took the stage, Gladys's microphone volume suddenly dropped by half. The band thought it was a technical glitch, until the sound engineer later revealed it was a direct order from Brown. A week later, when the tour reached London, Gladys's name disappeared from the promotional posters. The line, "Special guest, Gladys Knight and the Pips," had been replaced with James Brown and the Famous Flames. No one explained, no one dared to ask. A crew member recalled seeing Gladys sitting alone backstage, holding the old poster, her eyes empty. The humiliation didn't end there. According to Polydor Records archives, Brown demanded that Gladys's performance be cut from the official concert film, citing artistic inconsistency. When the video was released in 1972, she was nowhere to be seen. To the public, she had never been part of that tour. Rumors spread that Brown felt threatened by Gladys's voice, her soft, emotional soul tone that could move people to tears, while his relied on dominance and force. One crew member said he couldn't stand a woman getting louder applause than him. And when power felt challenged, Brown chose destruction. Years later, when Brown was arrested in 1988 for assaulting his wife, Gladys commented briefly in an interview, "I'm not surprised. A man who needed the whole world to kneel eventually got shackled by his own hands." To Gladys, James Brown wasn't just arrogant. He was a reminder that in an industry where men were worshipped as gods, women were expected to bow. Every time she heard "It's a man's world," she couldn't separate the song from the bitterness, because she had lived in that world where James Brown demanded worship and called a woman's silence loyalty. 5. Smokey Robinson, the smile that cut deepest. Smokey Robinson was the only man at Motown Gladys once considered a true friend. They began in the early 1960s, sharing dreams of music and black pride. He was gentle, soft-spoken, and known as the heart of Motown. But for Gladys, that smile was the sharpest knife. In 1968, Gladys recorded "It Should Have Been Me" at Hitsville, USA. She spent weeks perfecting it, believing it would put the Pips back at the top of the charts. But before her final mix could be released, Smokey, then Motown's creative director, quietly re-recorded the song, altered the arrangement, and released it first under the name Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. When Smokey's record dropped in November 1968, Gladys was on tour. She found out when fans shouted his name during her own concert in New York. She froze on stage, looking at Berry Gordy smiling and clapping in the front row. After the show, she went backstage and read the Billboard headline, "Smokey Robinson's new hit takes Motown higher." There was no explanation, no apology. Everyone inside Motown knew Smokey had used his position to release his version first, turning Gladys's recording into a canceled demo. Years later, a sound engineer confessed, "We were ordered to delete all of Gladys's original tracks from the vault. The official reason was technical maintenance." When asked about it years later, Smokey vaguely said, "Music flows. It doesn't belong to anyone." To Gladys, that line was unforgivable. In her 1970 diary, she wrote, "I once thought those who smile the most are the kindest, but sometimes they smile so you don't notice when they stab you from behind." From then on, she avoided all projects involving Smokey Robinson. When Motown planned a reunion concert in 1983, she refused to share the stage with him, even after a personal invitation from Berry Gordy. She told friends, "I can't stand next to the man who turned my song into his ticket to fame." To Gladys Knight, Smokey wasn't a loud enemy. He was betrayal disguised as kindness. And that was what terrified her most, because you never see it coming until the blood starts to flow. 6. Quincy Jones, the gatekeeper of silence. By the 1980s, Gladys Knight was a legend of more than 2 decades, but the music world had changed, and power no longer belonged to voices. It belonged to gatekeepers like Quincy Jones. To her, Quincy wasn't just a genius producer, he was the door between fame and oblivion, and that door slammed shut in her face. In 1985, the project We Are the World gathered over 40 of the world's biggest artists, promising to become the most powerful humanitarian anthem ever made. Gladys was invited early. Her name appeared on the official USA for Africa list. She prepared for weeks, picked her outfit, trained her voice, ready to sing for humanity. But when she arrived at A&M Recording Studios in Los Angeles on the morning of January 28, 1985, her seat was already taken by Dionne Warwick. Her manager asked why, and a production assistant replied coldly, "Quincy changed the lineup. Gladys's tone is too heavy for the mix." Not a single word from Quincy himself. No apology, no acknowledgement. She left the studio and sat in her car for hours. That night, when We Are the World aired, Gladys listened to every familiar voice: Michael Jackson, Lionel Richie, Stevie Wonder, Tina Turner. Everyone was there except her. In her 1997 memoir, she wrote, "I wasn't angry about being cut. I was angry that they made me believe I was wanted." Later, insiders revealed that Quincy thought her image was too tied to old-school Motown and didn't fit the new MTV era. He wanted a fresher lineup for a younger audience, and Gladys wasn't part of that vision. Rumors claimed that after she left, Quincy told the team, "Don't call her again. I need people who stay quiet when they're not chosen." To Gladys, Quincy Jones symbolized a world where talent wasn't enough anymore. A world where once celebrated artists were left outside simply because they no longer matched the aesthetic of power. After that, she never joined another superstar unity project again. Whenever she heard We Are the World, she smiled sadly, a song about humanity that began with exclusion. To Gladys Knight, Quincy Jones wasn't a personal enemy. He was the embodiment of the silence that power creates, the silence that erases even the greatest voices when they no longer fit the image the world wants to see. 7. Lionel Richie, the heir who erased the past. Lionel Richie was the face white America chose to replace an entire generation of soul. When he stepped on stage with his gentle smile and smooth voice, the world cheered, but artists like Gladys Knight only felt pain, because behind that softness was the deliberate erasure of everything they had built with blood, tears, and faith. In the 1980s, Lionel abandoned the spiritual roots of black music to enter the sanitized world of pop. He stripped away the moans, the grit, the pain, the very sounds that defined soul. Songs like Hello and All Night Long played everywhere, but to Gladys, they were funeral hymns for an era. Soul, once born in church, was now trapped in studios and sold like a product. Rumors in Motown circles said Lionel lobbied to be included in We Are the World, instead of veterans like Gladys Knight or Patti LaBelle. When the project aired, he stood front and center beside Michael Jackson, while Gladys was left out. She wasn't angry about losing her spot. She was angry because she realized that true soul no longer mattered, only those who were easy to hear, easy to sell, easy to broadcast. At the same time, former Commodores members revealed that Lionel had claimed full writing credit for their hits, pushed out his bandmates, and signed a solo deal worth millions. One ex-member said, "He didn't just leave the group, he left the legacy." When lawsuits followed, Lionel stayed silent, allegedly using Clive Davis's influence to bury the stories. To Gladys, Lionel Richie wasn't merely a replacement. He was proof that the industry could turn soul into a brand, faith into a marketing slogan. She called him the heir who was handed everything, not because he lacked talent, but because he represented the soul that had been bleached clean, stripped of pain in exchange for global spotlight. When she once heard "Say You, Say Me," she told her family, "I don't hate Lionel, I just hate the world that chose him to forget us." 8. Rick James, the profane child. Rick James was once Motown's new pride, but to Gladys Knight, he was a curse. She didn't just despise his vulgar songs, she despised how he turned rebellion into a weapon that destroyed everything her generation had built. In 1983, as funk dominated, Rick embodied raw lust. He told the press that soul was dead and sex was the new religion of music. When Gladys read that line, she knew her generation had lost a son. Funk was born from soul, from church drums and the dance of freedom. But Rick turned it into a stage for addiction, violence, and abuse. By the mid-1980s, stories from his backstage world shocked the industry. Secret casting sessions where female singers had to prove devotion behind closed doors before recording. Cocaine-fueled parties where music mixed with blood and tears. In 1989, police raided his Hollywood Hills home and found Rick and his girlfriend holding 2 models, captive and injured. The image of him in handcuffs became the tragic emblem of funk's downfall. Gladys Knight, who saw music as redemption, viewed Rick as its betrayal. In an interview, she said, "We sang to heal, he sang to destroy." After his conviction, Gladys sent no flowers, spoke no words. In her private notebook, she wrote, "When the soul is sold for pleasure, it stops being music. It becomes ritual sacrifice." Rick James died in 2004, alone in a small Los Angeles apartment, surrounded by pill bottles and faded gold records. His funeral was called a memorial for a funk god, but Gladys didn't attend. To her, he wasn't a god. He was the bastard child of soul, proof that power without faith only breeds demons in rhythm. 9. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, the architects of a new sin. Gladys Knight once believed music was living emotion, but Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis turned it into industry. They were the architects of the programmed sound era, where soul was dissected into digital formula. To her, they didn't just kill a genre, they killed its soul. When they created Control for Janet Jackson in 1986, the world chanted, "Freedom for women." But Gladys knew that behind it was cold machinery, a sound built in studios through cables and computers, with no room left for human spirit. They turned love songs into technical products. Drums no longer beat from hearts, but from machines. Vocals no longer trembled, only auto-aligned to rhythm. Vibe magazine once exposed the control empire they built, contracts locking dozens of young artists into years of dependency, taking percentages from every song. One anonymous singer said, "They make you believe you were chosen for your talent, then make you realize no one escapes their system." To Gladys, that was the worst sin, turning emotion into property. She once reached out to them in 1987 for collaboration, but was rejected flatly for having too classic a voice. A year later, they won multiple awards for Rhythm Nation, celebrated as modern soul. Watching the ceremony on TV, Gladys saw the bright lights and cheering crowd and thought, "They've turned our soul into computer frequencies." When asked about them years later, she said through tears, "They took the soul out of soul and called it progress." To her, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis weren't just producers. They were the architects of a new sin, the men who made music stop feeling pain. And when music no longer feels pain, it can no longer love. 10. Stevie Wonder. The friend who forgot to see. Perhaps the strangest pain in Gladys Knight's life was having to hate the man she once believed was Motown's last light. Stevie Wonder, the blind genius with the purest heart, was the symbol of soul's innocence. But for Gladys, he became proof that even light can blind the one who carries it. In the 1970s, while Gladys struggled to survive Motown's political web, Stevie was the only one she thought could understand her spirit. They once sat together in a Detroit studio in 1973, recording unnamed demos, sharing faith, God, and the loneliness of fame. Stevie promised to write her a song, something that would help people believe in each other again. But months later, that song appeared on his album Inner Visions as All in Love is Fair, with no space for her voice. She said nothing until she heard it become a global hit, with liner notes thanking the friends who inspired me. The real wound came later. In 1977, at the American Music Awards, Gladys was nominated alongside Stevie. She stood backstage holding his hand, wishing him luck. When Stevie won, he said on stage, "Motown has only one soul, and it's me." The audience laughed and applauded. Gladys stood frozen. That night, she left early, leaving behind the plane ticket Stevie had gifted her. Behind the glow of kindness, Stevie had shadows few dared mention. In the 1980s, at the height of his fame, he was accused of running a favor circle inside Motown, where artists seeking his help had to meet personal conditions. Some younger singers claimed he only worked with those who gave him the right energy, a euphemism for favoritism. A 1987 Village Voice feature hinted that he controlled charity projects more for image than altruism. Gladys saw it all in silence. She still respected him publicly, but privately, bitterness remained. In her personal notes, she wrote, "Stevie may not see, but he's blind to the pain of others." When she tried to reconnect during That's What Friends Are For, Stevie sent an apology through his manager, but never spoke to her directly. In 1995, at the Soul Legends Tribute in Los Angeles, Gladys sat in the second row as Stevie played on a white piano. The audience rose to their feet in ovation. She bowed her head, tears falling onto her invitation. In that moment, she realized the man who once lit the path for soul had forgotten how to see the hearts walking beside him. To Gladys Knight, Stevie Wonder was the saint who forgot his prayer, and that perhaps was the deepest wound of all. After hearing these 10 names, perhaps you can feel what Gladys Knight has carried for over 80 years, the bitterness of a woman who watched the soul of music bend under fame, power, and betrayal. They once sang together, prayed together, and then turned away in the same key. Leave a comment below and tell us who you think was the true sinner of Motown. Don't forget to subscribe, because in the next episodes, we'll go even deeper into the untold secrets and unheard confessions buried beneath the songs that shaped a generation.